This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Citizens participating in person wishing to speak should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand in Zoom or submit a public speaker card, and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Okay, Emily, will you please conduct the roll call?
Commissioner Arnrich?
Here.
Commissioner G?
Here.
Commissioner Xavier?
Here.
Acting Chair Noack?
Here.
Aye, we do have a quorum with Commissioner Burnell absent.
Okay. First item on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public are invited to address the committee regarding any item that's not listed on the agenda. Is there any public comment?
We do not have any public comments.
Okay. Great. That concludes public comment. And the next item on the agenda is the election.
Yeah,
of
excuse
chair-
me. Didn't we have a written comment from Mr. Swanson?
That was consent.
Oh, that was on consent?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
The next item on the agenda is the election of chair and vice chair for 2025.
Madam Acting Chair, if I could, I would like to nominate you, Sue Nowak, for Chair, and Rita for Vice Chair.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Arnrich?
Aye.
Commissioner G?
Aye.
Commissioner Xavier?
Aye.
Acting Chair Noack?
Yes.
Aye, motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Burnell absent.
Okay. So now I'll take over officially. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Oh, I should have asked for public comment on that one, but
There are no public comments.
that's what I guessed. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Are there any changes or comments from the committee? Does anybody want to pull any item? Okay. Is there any, there is a written public comment.
Yeah, we did receive a public comment from Brian Swanson. He provided a comment on 4D, and it was provided to the committee ahead of time.
Great, thank you. Any other public comment?
We have no further public comments.
All right. Can I get a motion for the consent calendar?
I move that we pass the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Arnrich?
Aye.
Commissioner G?
Aye.
Vice Chair Xavier?
Aye.
Chair Noack?
Yes.
Aye, motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Burnell absent.
Okay. We're now moving to the regular agenda items. First item will be introduced by Lindy Johnson to provide an update on legislation at both the state and federal levels. Exciting stuff.
Good morning, Chair Nowak, Commissioners. I'm happy to introduce Mark Watts, who's here to provide a state legislative update, including an update on some bills that we're currently monitoring, and then we'll turn it over to our federal update. Thank you. Go ahead, Mark.
Hi, thank you, Lindy, and I apologize. I made a mistake in my calendar item. I know it's supposed to be down there, but my item didn't mention that, so I apologize. I mean, I appreciate the ability to talk to you from here. I'm going to briefly cover a couple items, update of what's going on in the legislative process up here, then go over the bills as Lindy suggested. First of all, we were able to start taking a deeper look into the transportation budget. As you recall, the budget was introduced back in January, and they've had the legislative analysts and the committee staff looking at this. I guess the overarching thing for the transportation budget is there's nothing major of concern or note or even promise in the budget. It's a carryover budget, fairly steady state. Basically, the $11 billion that the last 2-year budgets provided in in new funding was retained in this budget cycle. So we're very, very pleased with that. The latest news is the effort by within 2 letters being sent from legislators to the Budget Committee seeking budget augmentations. Both of them reflect each other. Both request an additional $2 billion for the next 2 years to provide additional aid to transit agencies, transit districts around the state. Each letter has signatories that are very important to the budget process, including Budget Chair Wicks on one of them. So this is going to be, it's not an uphill battle. It's going to be just a competitive effort to make sure that this request is fit into the overall budget process. So I think the outlook on that is probably B+. I would also mention that one of the contextual items that is overlaying all the different work effort here in Sacramento this year is affordability issues. When the legislature convened in January, both leaders talked about requesting that their members, when they author bills, to be mindful of affordability. It goes beyond that, however. The Speaker has reformatted the Jobs Committee to add affordability to its jurisdiction and directed the committee to conduct listening sessions around the state. In addition, I would just add that the Cap and Trade program, which sunsets in 2030, as you know, it needs to be extended. There's a lot of concern being expressed about whether this is the year to extend it. And the Joint Legislative Committee on Climate Change Policies conducted a hearing last week on this whole matter of extension. And they also folded in, as you would expect, concerns about affordability. I think the last thing I'd like to point out before I jump to the bills is there was a very impressive hearing this week, probably the first opening salvo on the whole idea of how to replace the gas tax. We've been hinting at this, pardon me, there's been a lot of hinting up here by legislative leaders, transportation leaders, that we need to get on with the job. The effect of the increasing amount of fuel efficient vehicles, including EVs in the overall mix of vehicles in California, is seeing a diminishment in the fuel tax sales, and therefore, fuel sales that translates into fuel tax sales issues, revenue issues. The hearing this week was very, very, very well attended, and yeah, like I said, it's the opening salvo. We'll be hearing more about this. Interestingly enough, the chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee has introduced a legislation that would be a kind of a stalking horse for this issue, so that she could conduct hearings around the bill and hopefully move it to the second house for any future decisions to be made either in the next legislative year or the next session. Turning to bills, working with Lindy pretty closely recently, we had a slate of bills that we've looked at. In the area of autonomous vehicles, there are 3. Assembly member SB 480 by Mr. Archuleta would require a light marker be on when an automatic driving system is engaged. It seems like it does a little bit, and maybe a spot bill for more work. Senator Grayson has introduced SB 511, and his staff has reflected the fact that they continue to work on potential additional guardrails for the use of autonomous vehicles. In AB 33, Aguirre-Curry has been reintroduced in a sense at the spot bill this form. We don't think it's going to go down the path where it has really attacked or directed its focus on heavy-duty vehicles. We're just not clear yet. In the area of funding, a couple of interesting bills. Well, first off is SB 63 by Senator Wiener, which is the placeholder spot bill for a regional measure, and he's testing the waters with his fellow membership to see how and what form they can move forward with. And so that's not clear how that's going to move. Assembly Member 939 by new member Schultz it would place a $20 billion transit bond on the ballot. And that's an interesting approach. It would not necessarily assist in dealing with operational issues, but it could be used to displace or supplant and kind of free up operational funding at that point in time. CEQA, Senator Wiener has introduced SB 71. He's been the author of the CEQA relief for transit and alternative transportation. This bill would extend it indefinitely. So that seems to be a welcome new legislation. A couple of bills I just want to highlight that don't fall within these kind of categories. The first is AB 891. It requires Caltrans to develop 6 pilot projects that are called quick build projects and would be funded within the maintenance program using low-cost materials to develop 6 pilot bike and pedestrian projects throughout the state. They leave the development of guidelines and formula and structure to Caltrans to develop within their own program. The only really noteworthy goal is it's a limit of 6 pilots for now to test that technology. The bill I mentioned that Chair Wilson has introduced on declining revenues is AB 1421, just by note. And finally, there are 3 teleconferencing bills. The most notable for local jurisdictions is AB 259. There's a second measure, SB 707, that was introduced on the last day, but it seems to put more requirements on how teleconferencing would be administered. And SB 239 would deal with subsidiary bodies that have no legislative elected jurisdiction, but are advisory only. So think of your MACs or organizations like that. And so that brings that to a close. The goal that Lindy and I have set, or she has set for me, to be sure we have this analyzed with recommendations available to the committee and the board for April. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. That was really very thorough.
I know.
Any questions from anybody? No? Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Thank
Lindy, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Watts, and I'm happy to turn it over to Brooke Kintz. Hello, Brooke. Happy to have you here. Please feel free to provide. Please feel free to provide us a federal update.
Thanks, Lindy. And it's nice to see everyone again since last month. I'll kind of just give a very high-level overview of what's going on here in DC. I'm sure everyone's reading a lot of headlines that there's a lot going on, because there is. On the legislative front, we are about a week away from the deadline for appropriations. What we have heard and read and talked about is that it's likely they will look to pass a 1-year continuing resolution. It seems as though on the House side, the House Appropriations Chair doesn't, or at least he said publicly, he doesn't want to continue to go and pass 2-week CRs. It's likely that this might be a 1-year CR that they are pushing for. The House has also passed a blueprint for a large budget reconciliation package. The Senate is unlikely to take that up before the end of the month. They're still in the very early stages of ironing out what that actually looks like between both chambers and what they can agree on. But they have, passed the first hurdle, and that is just to get a blueprint out there so that they can pull together a large budget reconciliation bill. So the legislature is really focused on those two things at the moment. They're also focused on, of course, continuing down the line with confirmations. Just this past week, the Deputy Secretary for DOT had passed out of the Senate committee, and now there will be a vote on the floor. So DOT is starting to staff up. The agencies are, staffing up, but they're definitely not at full capacity right now just because of confirmations. There was also an announcement that the NHTSA administrator would be Jonathan Morrison, that they would put forward to get confirmed in the Senate. Jonathan was a part of the first Trump administration where he had worked in NHTSA. And then relatedly to this group, on the EO side, the executive orders, there in the last 10 days or so, and we talked to Tim and Lindy about this, there was an executive order from the president asking agencies to look at all grant funding and to work with OMB on that. And they had 30 days according to that executive order. So that's kind of the high level overview of what's going on here that this group would be interested in. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great, thanks, Brooke. Any questions? Newell?
Yeah, if, just on the last item you spoke about, exactly what does that executive order say that you got 30 days to look at all grant funding? I mean, is there a particular, if they have the word C in it, like California, is that the problem, or is there a criteria?
They didn't, at least from when I reviewed the executive order, they didn't call out any specifics. It was just kind of, each agency needs to look at funding. You need to work with OMB. You need to work with them quickly to explore what that will look like and what the agency is going to work with moving forward. So it's pretty broad, and that was just handed down for all agencies.
Okay, thank you.
It's a bit odd. Anybody else questions? Okay, thank you, Brooke. Lindy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Not at this time. Just appreciate you being here. Thank you, Brooke. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Executive Director Hale? All right.
Okay. Do we have any public comments on?
We have no public comments.
Okay, thank you. Next item, let's see, we got, next item is presented by Lindy as well to discuss the 2025 state and federal legislative advocacy programs.
You may have to hear from me a bit today.
Yeah, I'm gathering. You're ready.
So I am happy to seek your approval of our state and federal advocacy platforms. We do this each year, come to you as a committee and then as a board, seeking your approval of an overall platform. This is more of an overview of our legislative priorities. It is not a specific bill list. As you heard from Mark earlier, we'll be bringing that forward in April. For the state legislative advocacy platform this year, it's not much of a delineation from our 2024 advocacy platform. We're maintaining a lot of our top priorities. There's a bit of a reshuffling, mostly just kind of administrative, making sure that things kind of made sense in how they were aligned on the page, but the priorities themselves have maintained. I did want to mention that we do include secure cap and trade funding in the state budget, which was mentioned again by Mark, as it's been a conversation topic this session early on. However, there seems to be already a lot of desire to sort of push that conversation forward, perhaps to 2026. That being said, MTC is having some meetings with CTAs and other groups to sort of talk about what that could mean and what the main priorities regionally will be for future cap and trade funding should that be renewed. So we're definitely engaging in those conversations and appreciate MTC engaging everyone in kind of a regional conversation around it. The one other thing I wanted to just sort of highlight is that we continue to emphasize transportation funding levels and transit funding, as those will certainly be large conversations this year as we foresee a measure coming forward, or legislative authority for a measure coming forward for a regional transportation measure, So certainly this platform allows us to continue to engage in those conversations. On the federal legislative advocacy platform side, there's a little bit more change than in previous years. We decided to change our language to really emphasizing the protection of federal funding and the ability to maximize our visibility federally. Since we do have administration, we also have a lot of new political appointees. It feels important that we go and spend some time in DC letting folks know who CCTA is, what we do, what our priorities are, and really allowing there to be a heightened acknowledgement of us as an agency. Generally, our platform is not so much about brand recognition, but we felt like it was important this year to emphasize that it is important for us to just let people know at the federal level who CCTA is, as we're having a lot of new folks coming forward. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that we did move up and slightly adjust the language related to encouraging regulatory reform and streamlining. We do anticipate there will be a lot of conversations this year at the federal level around regulatory reform, and we wanted to emphasize that that'll certainly be a priority. Those are the only things I wanted to share. Please open to any questions. Otherwise, I seek your approval.
I assume that part of the protect is to protect the mega grant.
Yes, ma'am.
Just making an obvious statement, but thought I'd make it anyway. Any other questions? No? Okay, any public comment?
We did not receive any public comments.
Okay. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Arnrich,
Aye.
Commissioner G,
Aye.
Vice Chair Xavier,
Aye.
Chair Noack.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Burnell absent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now Lindy gets a break. Next item is an action item presented by Brian Kelleher. Oh, I was about to say, where'd he go? And he moved already. To discuss the fiscal mid-year budget. Brian.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Brian Kelleher. I'm the CFO for CCTA. As we go through the presentation today, it's a mid-year adjustment based on where we were last June when we came to you. And so what happens during the fiscal year is we work with all the department directors, we work with the capital team as well, Hisham and the team there, we work with planning, we work with the programs division, and we go through what contracts we have open, review them, take a look at what they think they're going to spend by the end of June. What makes CCTA a little different than like a municipality is a lot of our contracts and different things that come in and our sales tax revenues don't really start until September, start collecting, and we finish our year by collecting them in August. And so what we try and do is, instead of coming to you in January, we try and come to you in March so that we can have actually 6 months of data to present to you. And so with that, it gives us an easier time to go through and evaluate the process and make some adjustments. For what? Oh. I thought it already was, sorry. All right, thank you. So right here is the summary of changes. It's the same screenshot we've been using for a number of years. Sales tax revenue is the #1 revenue source, obviously, for us. Based on projections, we're going to leave it at $120 million. Federal, state, and local revenues, a lot of that is earmarked on a lot of the grants that we have and a lot of the projects that we share with the cities. And those numbers fluctuate. If we have a lot of rain in a season, or something delays a project, or something advances a project, those numbers will go up and down. A lot of them are reimbursable. So when we have the expenditures, we seek reimbursement. And so when we delay some of the projects a little bit, we also decrease it. And so that's what you're seeing right there in the federal, state, and local revenues. Local revenues, again, we have a major project in San Ramon that's going on. We have some STIP funding in there, but the local piece of that is a commitment from San Ramon to pay CCTA for advancing the project and doing that as well. Other investment and other income is an increase of about $700,000 as interest rates are still remaining for us at about 4% or a little bit more. We're adjusting our investment income up. Other sources in there you can see is $31 million, $29 million. For new people sitting on the board, that is revenue that has been collected since the inception of Measure J. And so as we collect this money, it takes many, many years for us to deliver these projects. And so if we hold the money and we give them to the Ped Bike, TLC, and some of our capital projects, It's just money sitting in there earmarked for these specific projects that we're actually doing this year. And that's what the use of those other sources are. Projects, programs, planning, administration, debt service, non-Measure J projects. The projects department is always the one that fluctuates the most. It's all about a timing of construction projects. Innovate 680 is a big piece of that in there for the adjustment, moving things out to next fiscal year. Program section is more projects being done by the programs division. Planning section, just the timing of contracts. Debt administration section, you can see it increased 2.8 million. In that, we just came to the board last month to talk about a pension payment of about $2.4 million that was made last month. And so that makes up the 2.4 million of the increase in there. And then there's some additional salaries in there. And then there's some additional money that we had in there for this fiscal year, the remodel that we did at CCTA. Non-Measure J projects, street lights, just some minor adjustments for $5,000. And we think about sales tax revenues, and here's just a quick look back at the last several years. And so in 2022, we were just starting to come out of the pandemic. We had some extra collection payments in 2023, leveled out just a little bit in 2024. And as we looked at 2025, we've been meeting with HDL on a quarterly basis, who does our projections. And it looks like right now we might be at about 120.4 on the latest projections. But then again, we've only been into the year about 6 months. A lot of political changes could happen, a lot of different things. Gas prices could go up, which would help us on our sales tax. So we decided to leave it alone at $120,000, $120 million. Yes. Capital projects, reimbursements for capital projects. Again, that's grant reimbursements. The authority pays promptly on all of these things. You've heard us talk about this over the last several years with a lot of our large construction projects. We try and turn around our construction payments within anywhere between 5 to 10 days, which is really fast, which reduces risk, which also gives us a better cost estimate when we do bid out these projects. So RM3 money is based off the timing of the project. Federal money, again, is the realignment of some of the capital projects. STIP, TECP, state, and other funding. Again, it's all related to our grants. We have about probably, I think it's 32 active grants right now that we track and we bill out on a quarterly basis. As far as external, federal, state, and local revenue, the planning and CMA function for CCTA also collects additional money outside of these individual projects that you see in the top part of this slide. We get about $1 million a year for the CMA function from the feds. And then we also have $1.4 million in countywide smart signals and safety action plan grants that's coming in. We also have state planning, programming, and monitoring, and it's about $578,000. A little bit of that is a carryover from last year of extra funds we didn't use last year, but that is specifically used for staff. So that's the allocation of staff to deliver all these projects, oversee all these programs. Stephanie and Nisham charged there, many people in the planning department charged there as well. And so we're looking to use all of those funds up this year. Contributions from other agencies, we have a streetlight data subscription. That subscription costs us about $477,000 a year. We also work with many cities that sign up to do that. And we collect this year $191,000. So the cost of CCTA on that is about $286,000 for that subscription. The CMA function for CCTA, we go out and we do all these countywide projects. We get some external money, the $1 million in CMA functions, and whatever projects we deliver for all the cities in that year, it's a delta. Our total expenditures for salary, our contracts, minus the revenues we get, and then that's the delta that we bill the cities. And so we last year wrapped that up, and we're anticipating it's about $687,000 for this year, and it's prorated share across all of the cities in the county. Motor vehicle registration surcharge, that's something we get on an annual basis. This year it looks to be about $1.6 million. And again, the Iron Horse Trail overcrossing STIP funds, we have about $5.3 million of the $9.2 million that we were allocated to get reimbursed. They're in the construction phases of that. So there's going to be a lot more billing and receiving of the funds on that. City of San Ramon has earmarked about $4.6 million for us. We hope to receive that money as well as they finish the construction on that project. Contra Costa County, Measure X funds for programs is earmarked about $1.5 million of revenue there. And then various city contributions for smart signals and local projects, $3.6 million. Again, this is a worksheet for the capital projects. Capital projects does make up the largest part of CCTA. And as you look at all the projects in there, you have our project categories that come from our strategic plan, 1 through 9, is about $26 million. We have external funding on these projects, about $17.7 million. And so in the bottom right-hand corner, how much Measure J money? That was that other sources I was talking about in the beginning that we're carrying forward, that we have in our resources and set aside for these projects in prior years, is about $8.3 million. Many questions that have come up over the years is on the proposed budget column. You see the 26 million, but you say, hey, we've been driving through the Caldecott Tunnel for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Why are we still paying out $160,000? Well, in order for CCTA to deliver all of the projects and programs, there's an oversight. There's an oversight that's being done, and there's a consultant cost that comes with that to help us deliver all the projects and programs, do the grant reimbursements, to managing the projects, to the closeout, to all of those things. And so that's about $1.2 million of oversight on those projects and programs. And the capital project changes, if you want to see on an individual basis in the capital projects, again, Measure J total of $30.5 million for the proposed budget. It's an $18 million decrease. And again, 15% of the $204 million is the capital project programs. And you can see the delta changes on like I-680 corridor, $6.5 million, almost $8 million as the delay of the project on I-80, to the sub-regional street improvement projects that have been delayed as well. The programs department. The programs department is the allocation. So CCTA collects the sales tax revenue. There's a percentage of that income that goes to every single project and program that is earmarked for us to be a pass-through agency and put money aside. Ferry service collects probably about 5% of that, and that money sits in a reserve account, and we allocate funds out to the ferry service in Richmond on an annual basis. Bus services, TLC, Ped Bike, commute alternatives, and paratransit. We increase money, and as we deliver these projects and do these things in part of the years, we use those other funding sources to help deliver in that particular year. All of your cities in the county, we have a return to source, local sub-regional street maintenance. That's about 20% of the revenue we receive. That's $24.1 million that we'll allocate out this year. San Ramon for the Iron Horse Trail crossing is a $12 million project. We're in the construction phase. Once that construction phase is done, that project will be gone and we won't have that expense in the next several fiscal years. Increases in the budget for TLC programs, $20 million, Ped Bike, $8.4 million. There's a slight decrease in the budget for commute alternatives. We got about $1.9 million for EV readiness, and then there's about $1.5 million delayed for that particular project as well. Paratransit program, $8.8 million. We have the ATSP, the TNC, the One Click, life projects. And then again, several programs and budgets are revised to reflect current commitments. So TFCA, you saw the revenue of 1.6. We have some external funding from the year before that'll be utilized to pay this year. So there's a budget in there for 1.8. And then, like a lot of cities, we have special revenue funds. And so Go Menum Station is a special revenue fund for CCTA, where we collect money. It's external money that comes in and it's dedicated for one specific service. So we acquired almost 1 year ago, April 1st of last year, we acquired Go Menum Station from AAA. And so as we're trying to develop and use oversight to get that station up and going and get it out there, we have a proposed budget of about $1 million. And so with probably about 4 months left in the fiscal year and working with Tim yesterday, we talked about some of these expenditures. We have about $500,000, which is part of our contract with NextGen to receive the CCTA. So some of these current contracts and projections that we're going to be working on the next several months might be deferred to next fiscal year. And so in there, there's salaries and benefits benefited for this fiscal year to be about $52,000. Attorney fees based off all the different things that are happening out there. We have a budget out there for $100,000. And then we also utilize consultants to help us manage the AAA or the Gomentum Station AMG support based off of the task orders and different things listed is about $550,000. Workforce development is $600,000. And again, some of those costs might be deferred to next year. Website development, $50,000, a subscription with Holland Knight for the ACES board membership at $25,000. And then we also have some funds set aside for some additional branding at $20,000. The planning department worked with John and his team to go through there and take a look at all the contracts and see where we could defer. Do we really need to have all of these monies and contracts and different things in there? Project delivery. And they were able to go through and work with the consultants to revise their budget, and we reduced the budget about $1 million. Regional planning tasks, about $412,000. CTP update, $800,000, which is our biggest ticket item in there. And then again, big data, the $477,000 that we talked about earlier. VMT mitigation, Vision Zero implementation was reduced a little bit. Now we have a budget of about $100,000 in there. And again, we talked about the salaries and benefits that are paid by state planning and programming. The PPM funds is about $578. On-call contracts awarded and budgeted is about $1.4 million in there, and several contracts studies are partially funded by grant revenues. OBAG 3 studies and action plans is about a budget of about $1.5 million. The administration budget, and so I pulled out the $2.4 million in here so we could just look at the 402. Last month we did the allocation of $2.4 million. Thank you very much. When we get the reports from CalPERS in August, it'll let us know kind of where we are on the unfunded status, but that'll come in again in August, and we'll be looking forward to that. Salaries and benefits are about $1.1 million for administration. And in the TEP, the tax expenditure plan, there's a 1% of the sales tax money that's set aside for administration. And so right now we're sitting at about 0.95% of the 1%. Office expenses and equipment, we increased the budget about $300,000 to reflect the planned office renovation. Professional services, we have about $894,000 for public outreach, social media, project management support. And again, we have the attorney fees of $165 million. And debt service. Debt service is $44.4 million. It's a fixed debt service that we have. We refinanced our bonds. It actually closed 2 days ago. That's going to save us about $8 million over the next 9 years. But there's no there's no budget change in that because our principal and interest payments are in September 1st and March 1st, and those already happened, so those numbers will stay the same. Authority salaries and benefits is $7.87 million. It's an increase of $945,000 from the mid-year budget. Since the original budget in June, we added several employees. We added the budget for those employees. We have 27 filled positions right now. We just filled this week, earlier this week, the Deputy Executive Planning Program and Policy. We prorated that salary through the end of the fiscal year. The Deputy Executive Director for Projects and Operation is also prorated in the budget. That individual will start at the end of this month. And then we also have 3 retired annuitants. We have one that works in communication, one that works in programs, and then we have one that works in the projects division. Again, annual PERS employer rate increases. This is probably one of the hottest topics for most cities and agencies, and ours for the classic employees at around 11.88%. Pepper employees is about 7.87%. And why do I put these in here? Because when you see your budgets at your cities and different things, they're going to be a lot higher. You have a lot more staff. You may have police, you may have fire, anywhere from 18, 24%, even higher maybe with some other agencies. And then we also have the annual OPEB employer contribution rate. Over the years, It used to be around 10% that we used to put in there, but with CCTA's actions many, many years ago, they contributed some money and they were the benefactor of putting your money to work. They took the cash on hand, they signed a contract, and now we work with CalPERS on the OPEB side, and those interest earnings have really accumulated over the years. And so as people continue to retire, we are fully funded. We have about $1 million surplus in that particular plan. And so we were able to reduce our annual contribution from about 10% down to about 2%. I've had several conversations with them. They say, why are you still paying? The number one reason why we're still paying is we want to make it as small as possible so that if something happens at the agency, somebody doesn't forget about it. And if we contribute just a little bit, when I leave, the next person comes. When they leave, they know that that's what they're supposed to be doing, and it's touching every quarter, every year you're seeing that number, and it's ongoing. So with that, I apologize for how lengthy this was, but please approve us to take us to the board with our suggested changes in there. Any comments, questions?
Darlene?
Thank you, Brian. On your first slide, I apologize since I'm new. On your first slide, can you share whether the shortfalls in the federal and state revenues is that a timing issue or is that something more serious?
We did not take out any federal state revenues projected based off of anything that may or may not happen. These is a direct result of what our budgeting. So when we have a capital project, and let's say we were going to build $25 million on that capital project and $20 million was grant funded, if the project timeline moves from this year to the next year, we defer that grant revenue seeking there. So it's a slice of your annual time. So there is no projected loss of revenue at this point in time until we actually know.
I was going to say that's a good point. It's an observation. It's a little unusual, but because the complexity of our projects, Brian is doing an actual cash flow. So while we estimated X cash flow, it's a little bit less now because projects are going to move out. And we know clearly Innovate 680 is moving out, and that's a big project. So this is very accurate, very time consuming to do this, but it's really well done.
Any other questions? No? Do we have any public comment?
We did not receive any public comments.
Okay. Can I get a motion and a second to bring this to the board, full board?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Arnridge,
Aye.
Commissioner G,
Aye.
Vice Chair Xavier,
Aye.
Chair Noack. The motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Burnell absent.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Chair Noack. At the end of 2024, we came forward with the Gomentum Innovation Alliance, brought it here to APC and then to the board. The Gomentum Innovation Alliance is a workforce development effort led here by CCTA. We came forward and asked the board to form the Gomentum Innovation Alliance, and during that discussion, particularly here at APC, the board asked us to come back early this year to provide an update on our progress. That being said, because we have some new board members, I thought it would be helpful to go through some of the original slides and provide some background on the forming of the Gomentum Innovation Alliance and what drove us to do this here at Contra Costa Transportation Authority. So why are we creating the Gomentum Innovation Alliance? The authority is a leader in this mobility technology space. We also have launched some projects, including our Martinez May Mobility project that had a workforce development component. We partnered with Transdev and ATU to fund a workforce development project that allowed ATU drivers paratransit drivers primarily to become the drivers at our Martinez project. It's been quite successful, and through that process, we had a lot of conversations that helped us to really, I think, deepen our awareness of the need for more workforce development conversations in this space. We were having some of those conversations at the state and federal level as well, and often found ourselves in rooms where folks were saying, we need to be working on talking about workforce and what this means for the future of the workforce, but we didn't have a lot of folks to point to that were actually doing that work. And so we took it as a bit of a call to action and said, if it's not being done anywhere, we're going to start having these conversations here in hopes that we continue to build partnerships with others who are also excited to engage in these conversations. I will also note that there was a bill a few years ago that included a veto letter that related to driver-in AV projects that included in its veto letter a call to action around workforce development. And I think we also took that as a bit of a call to action. We looked to the state to understand what they were doing, and while they were engaging a lot of conversations, there wasn't a very open process that we could be part of. And so we were interested in starting that and having that conversation here in Contra Costa, since we already see ourselves as a leader. We thought this is a position in which we could further lead. I'll just highlight here that it also provides a coordinated approach to workforce development, allowing us to build partnerships, particularly with labor, where we feel like it's very important to build partnerships. We want to be proactive in these conversations and not see things done from a place of reaction or reactiveness. So mobility is the movement of people and goods. We feel like it's important to highlight this because the Gomentum Innovation Alliance is certainly going to have a lot of conversations around transit, but we also know that it will likely have conversations around the movement of goods and freight, which has been a lot of the conversations currently happening at the state level around AVs and driver-in bills, right? They often relate to freight movement. In our first and initial conversations, there seems to be a lot of interest in thinking about the current transit workforce, and that's been a really fruitful conversation for us. But I think it's important to acknowledge to our board that we are saying mobility technology in a more broad sense that includes both people and goods. So the Innovation Alliance is really going to concentrate on mobility technology, and we think it's helpful to identify what spaces mobility technology might include. Here we have automation, connectivity, digitalization, electrification, and systems. We've already received a little bit of feedback on this, and we do think that a lot of these are working documents and that the Gomentum Innovation Alliance governance structure, the folks within the alliance itself, will certainly help to inform priorities. But going forward, as we were getting started, we wanted to make sure that we were able to identify some of the spaces with which this alliance would be working and helping us to identify workforce development programs. So here's a graphic that just sort of gives you an idea of the governance of this Innovation Alliance. That top kind of half circle just sort of acts as an umbrella, and the two bottom half circles are our two different boards and council. These are the folks actually doing the work. The Regional Workforce Council is a regional group really thinking about program implementation. These are the folks who are going to be thinking about what skills we could develop locally, what kind of programs we could develop locally, and who we might need as partners to be successful. We also are forming a strategic advisory board. These folks will only meet twice a year, and they will be there to provide us strategic advice as the Regional Workforce Council considers these programs and provides information on how we can both influence, educate, and encourage the state to be proactive. The Strategic Advisory Board will also be a lot of, hopefully, folks who have a lot of experience in this space and help us in thinking about who else we should be having or engaging in these conversations. They'll also provide introductions and grant funding information, so really provide us a lot of information that they have learned in their extensive experience. Our hope is that the Strategic Advisory Board will include a lot of statewide leaders and that they'll be able to give us a lot of advice on scalability, right? So if our Regional Workforce Council is saying, hey, we think this is a great program, we've developed a micro-credential, we're really excited about that, we could take it to the Strategic Advisory Board and say, how can we better showcase this throughout the state and highlight it throughout the state so that others who are also interested in providing this kind of workforce development experience within their region or their area can learn about it. So the Gomentum Innovation Regional Workforce Council, it's a bit of a mouthful, again, is our regional group. We have had our first kind of educational, informational meeting of the Regional Workforce Council. We will be officially launching at the Redefining Mobility Summit in April, but we wanted to have a meeting to bring folks together who'd expressed interest, have a little bit of conversation about what they wanted to get out of the council, and provide information about what we had done thus far so that folks, for example, Waymo is up there, would have a bit of a flavor and be able to go back to their organization and get official approval to join the Alliance in April. You can see that little picture there. That's a picture of all of us sitting at the table during that initial presentation. One of the things I was asked to do from the last APC meeting where we talked about the Momentum Innovation Alliance was to give more of a flavor of who would be invited. So I did want to just let you all know some of the folks that were in that room during that first Momentum Innovation Alliance Regional Workforce Council meeting. Tamia Brown, who is the Executive Director of the Workforce Development Board, was there and able to participate. She's already committed to joining and will be there at the April meeting. Beth Arman and Kelly Schlin, who are both from the Contra Costa Community College District. Beth works at DVC and is really active in career technical education and thinking about pathway development. And Kelly, who leads all of their technology work. We also had April Treese, who is our partner at Bay Area Leads. Happy to talk more about the great work we're able to do with her in STEM education a little later in this presentation. We had Laura Melendi, who is from UC Berkeley. It was wonderful to have her kind of insight on how we might create programs that would also provide transferability, perhaps into the UC system. Hillary Nixon, who's from Minetta, was able to join us. Maurice Baird, who works with the Transit Workforce Center and is a former VTA employee. We had a lot of folks from our tech and industry partners, including Beep, Aurora, and as I mentioned, Waymo was able to join us. Many of them are still seeking official confirmation from their organizations that they'll be able to join us at the launch in April, but we saw a lot of great engagement from them in the conversations, and they definitely expressed a lot of value. That's not a comprehensive list. I'm happy to provide one, but I did just want to kind of give you a flavor of who was able to join us for our initial meeting. So the informational session, hopefully you can see that. It looks a little blurry up there on that screen, but it was on February 25th, so we just had it last month. This is a flavor of what the agenda looked like, and we had 16 attendees, not counting our CCTA staff and our consultant. And I'll take a moment to just thank Plum Catalyst, who is our consultant on this project. They were really helpful in organizing this, and they've definitely brought a lot of their expertise in workforce development to forming both of these councils. So during this initial meeting, we asked a handful of questions that we will be taking back to further our work, including what kind of role the organization plays in mobility technology. And you can kind of see from this pie chart that we were really fortunate to be able to get folks from many different sectors, which is the goal here, right? We wanted to set a table and to be able to have intersectional, interdisciplinary conversations. Labor has committed. ATU is really excited and will be at our launch in April. Unfortunately, they weren't able to make this meeting. We also asked folks about what mobility technologies they're most excited about. What are they seeing a lot of passion around within their organizations or even just personally? And as you can see here, we created a little bit of a word cloud, but there's a lot around connected infrastructure, automation, electrification, digitalization, which is encouraging. It means we're on the right track, and some of those initial sectors or areas that we highlighted are also aligned with what we're hearing from our council members and participants. And then lastly, we asked them what they wanted to get out of the Regional Workforce Council. We wanted to ensure that the folks who were participating in this were aligned and that we also were bringing forward a vision that aligned with what they wanted to get out of this council and what the council would be able to provide to the region and area. And in general, there was a lot of communication around solutions and actions. Folks are excited to think about what we could actually do as a regional council that would lead to program development and actual workforce development programs here in our region. I talked a little bit earlier about the Strategic Advisory Board, but I wanted to just bring back this slide. As a reminder, there's a lot of familiarity or similarity between the folks at the regional council level and the statewide, the Strategic Advisory Board level. But the Strategic Advisory Board level will likely be folks who do work at the statewide level or who have influence throughout the state or experience that maybe is a little bit more statewide or strategic. For example, we highlight there the California Transit Association, right? They may not necessarily know the ins and outs of developing a program here in Contra Costa County, but they do know quite a lot about what is happening in transit throughout the state. So this was the timeline that we had brought forward when we came to speak to you all in November, and I just wanted to provide it again. You'll see here that we are updating you all in March. Originally, we had said we'd come back in February, but because we were bringing a new board in, we thought that March would be more appropriate, give you all some time to orient. And that all of our our Strategic Advisory Board and our Regional Workforce Council will both launch at RMS, which is at the very end of this timeline. Certainly, the timeline goes on, but we wanted to just bring this back as our kind of initial launch information. So this is our budget and staffing information. We had brought this forward so that the board would have a little bit more information about what we anticipated the need being for the Regional Workforce Council and the Strategic Advisory Board. Nothing has changed since November on this slide. I'm just simply including it for informational purposes. So when we talk about the Gomentum Innovation Alliance and we talk about workforce development, what are we really meaning? This is a slide, again, developed by Plug Catalyst, thank you, to give a little bit more context to what we're saying when we're saying workforce development. So we're already really involved in this sort of step one, this exploring space. Even before the Gomentum Innovation Alliance, CCTA was active in supporting STEM programs in our high schools, including like a local Femineers program, bringing students into the Redefining Mobility Summit to support their engineering programs, supporting Girls Lead the Way, and a whole middle school STEM day that we host down in San Ramon. And those are the sorts of experiences we hope to continue to be both involved in and to lead. In fact, this summer will be part of our first summer camp, and we are taking an already existing engineering pathway program that leads to a summer camp. It's actually a residential summer camp for engineering students, and we're going to be bringing a lot of mobility technology into that program. So initially, they built a little car that went over a bridge. This year, they're going to be building a car that's going to have to stay between two lanes and is going to use ADAS systems to be able to do so. We're also bringing in a little bit of 3D printing that'll allow them to put a camera onto their little car so that they can hopefully program their camera to be able to tell whether the car is seeing a green light, a red light, or a yellow light. So we're really excited to be able to already be thinking about how to enhance these exploration opportunities. Step two is this sort of experience, right? Bringing high school students in to have job shadowing, to talk and be mentored, really thinking about how we can deepen that experience. The step three is Excel. That's where we're talking about more of those real world experiences, internships and externships, bringing teachers in to learn about mobility technology and potentially even creating industry certificates, right? Some kind of add-on programs for folks who are already in the transit and transportation space. This is where we talk about a little bit of upskilling and reskilling. And then step four is that evolve, right? Really upskilling and reskilling, micro-credentialing for the current workforce and for those interested in getting into the workforce for the first time. That'll include potentially micro-credentialing, customized training programs, shared collaborative programming, potentially even extending programs that already exist at our community college or potentially even at our state and UC systems. So we're excited to kind of see how that evolves, how the evolution of Evolve evolves. So when we talk about enhanced offerings for youth, this was a slide that we brought forward to just give you a sense of what those could look like. We talked a bit about interactive experiences, but what exactly does that mean? You can sort of read this as it's in your packet, but also increasing access, creating more STEM summer academies and experiences. I just gave a bit of a flavor of what that'll look like. And then also deepening school partnerships, right? So we already go into schools and talk a lot about safe routes to schools, talking about how to access your school, talking about bike and pedestrian safety, but is there also an opportunity for us to better influence and support curriculum development in our construction management and in engineering programs at our high school? So these are the sorts of things that the Regional Workforce Council will be exploring and providing some feedback on. But likely, their deeper work will be in this evolve space. So first, we've established the Gomentum Innovation Alliance. We've done that first informational meeting. We have a lot of enthusiasm and support and excitement about this work. The next step will be finishing the gaps and needs analysis. And in further slides, I'll go into a little bit more about exactly what that analysis looks like. But the Regional Workforce Council will reflect on this gaps and needs analysis, and through that reflection, identify some program development areas. Hopefully, that program development work will lead to pilots where we'll be able to actually see what kind of mobility technology information we're able to produce for upskilling and reskilling opportunities, or again, potentially for some collaborative partnerships. And we hope that all of that will come from information we glean through this gaps and needs analysis work. So what is the gaps and needs assessment or analysis? So This is an opportunity for us to hear from industry, academic partners about what potential gaps and needs exist in the field currently and how we could better create skilled and reskilling and upskilling opportunities and/or initial educational opportunities to meet those gaps and needs and to develop those needed skills. So we are aiming for about 60 to 100 participants. This gaps and needs work is currently ongoing. The Plum Catalyst team folks have been doing interviews already, but we aim to do about 60 to 100, both individual interviews and focus groups. And this is a little bit of a flair of who we might be interviewing. We've definitely already done a lot of industry interviews, but also education, labor, university and research, and then those who work in the actual workforce development space already, likely those from workforce development boards. This is the assessment approach, so the objectives, process, and outcomes. I'll kind of concentrate here on the outcomes as you do have this in your slides, and it's a lot of text. But the outcomes are that we'll be able to support Gomentum's role as a key workforce development hub, that we'll be able to inform regional training initiatives, career pathways, and partnerships to meet the mobility sector's evolving demands, and that we will be able to ensure workforce development alignment with future mobility industry growth and regional economic goals. I think they're really ambitious, but also really important goals. So the current status, as I mentioned, we've conducted 23 interviews, or we have 23 scheduled. I think there's about 8 that were scheduled at the time that I made these slides, but were likely done by the time I'm presenting to all of you. And we have 6 focus groups that we are working on developing. That is the end of my current presentation on the Gomentum Innovation Alliance. Goodness. I would look forward to any discussion or questions. Thank you.
So that's lots of information, lots of exciting stuff going on. Can you give me an idea on really the budget dollars involved and where that money is coming from? Because it's obviously not coming from Measure J. So can you, for everybody, just outline that stuff for us?
Absolutely. So the Gomentum Innovation Alliance is funded through the money coming from Gomentum Station. So when NextGen took over Gomentum, when CCTA took over Gomentum Station and we're contracting with NextGen, there was an agreement for dollars to come back to CCTA. I think it's a really great story from a communication standpoint that we can share that Gomentum Station is helping to fund workforce development work. The dollars themselves, both the staff time I use as I provide project management and oversight for this, I've charged to Gomentum. You saw that staff time in the last slide that Brian showed. And then the budget that we had projected when we initially came was that we would need about $100,000 to support the facilitation and the project management of these 2 groups. That didn't include exact dollars for research or kind of further gaps and needs identification. And so I didn't identify an exact number here because we're still working out what the projected budget number will be for the next year. And part of that is also about what NextGen projects that they'll be able to provide to us, as they definitely see the value and have expressed that there may be some potential further dollars for them that they would be able to dedicate towards workforce development outside of the $500,000 that they've already committed to CCTA.
And the contract with Catalyst?
Is all covered by the dollars that come in through Gomentum Station.
So, but Ryan's budget for Gomentum was 1.1 out with 500,000 coming back net. So it was a 600,000 going out on expenditures for CCTA. So if the 500,000 is used for, or some of that is used for this, sort of the net to CCTA is now 800,000 or so. So I assume some of that will go down because a lot of that was initial stuff. But so right now, CCTA is still in a hole. We're not actually generating enough money from Gomentum to fund this. So maybe you can talk to
Yeah, maybe I can take this. So basically in the professional service agreement with Next Generation Mobility, there's basically 2 things in terms of revenue. One is that the first thing is that they give you, or they give CCTA 5%, or I'm sorry, 10% of the net revenue, or of the gross revenue, or $500,000, whichever is greater. So right now, the gross revenue is not at 500 or 5 million. So right now we're getting the $500,000. So there's also another clause in the agreement which we have been talking with NextGen about, is we can actually seek reimbursement above and beyond the $500,000. And so right now, we've been coordinating with NextGen on, we just got their Q4 report for calendar fiscal year last year. And so right now they're relatively projecting about 300 plus K of that 500K. And then basically we have Q1 of this year because the actual 500K payment is due at the anniversary, which is April 1 of the agreement. And then we're in conversation with NextGen on before annual one or before April 1, they have to give us like an annual budget for the following year. And so the way we're kind of judging, number one, we're going to have an update on Gomentum Station coming up in April, and we'll go through all of this in much greater detail. But it's really lining up all of the cash flows and budget. So like and fiscal year. So our fiscal year is June 1 to July 1, or July 1 to June 30. Their fiscal year is calendar year. And then the whole thing is governed on the anniversary date, which is April 1. So they're potentially funding the 500K from two fiscal years, right? And so basically they're on target or on projection to give us the $500,000 at the anniversary. And then we're in discussions to basically make up the difference in the next fiscal year. That's upcoming fiscal year for them. So the next anniversary. So, because right now,
pay $700,000.
so well, no, it'll be so the net difference is 1.1 plus the 600K, or sorry, 1.1 minus the 500, which is the 600K. So we're in conversations on to make up the 600K to make us whole in the following fiscal year, basically. So the goal is to basically have Next Generation Mobility and Gomentum Station in year one, obviously very starting up and revenues. And so there was a lot of upfront costs on both sides, including us, which is why we have the 1.1 million, including like updating the website and like doing a lot of upfront stuff that we knew was going to happen. So the idea is to make CCTA whole, essentially like in future fiscal years as the net revenue for Gomentum Station becomes greater and greater and greater. So based on the annual budget, right now, they're projecting roughly about 1.5 to 2 million in net revenue for the following fiscal year. So we're anticipating, getting our loan paid back and then also asking for the 500K. And then for this workforce development stuff, we're going to be asking for an additional 500K. So that's 1 million. And then we're going to be asking to make up the difference on the 600K. So essentially what we're going to try to do is get that entire 2 million net revenue to come back to CCTA in the following fiscal year. So that way we're made whole in the following fiscal year. So.
But you'll give us updates on that.
Yeah, I'm going to give you updates on all of that. Yeah.
The number person in me, sorry. Always got to do that.
It's okay. Hopefully I made sense.
Not entirely, but.
Okay. Well, we'll map it all out in April.
Okay.
So.
Great. Any other questions, Darlene?
Lindy, my question is, this is all very impressive, but my question is, has there been any discussion about what is the metric or what measures what the results are from all of this?
We have had some of those preliminary discussions. I do think that it's a conversation we also look forward to having with the Regional Workforce Council as well, so that they have some ownership of those set metrics, right? So that we can set some strategy and how we're going to judge our own success as a council. That being said, I do think that the completion of the gaps and needs assessment is sort of a first metric of sorts. We want to complete that and be able to report back to them so that they have work to work with or something to look at as a gauge of what they want to invest in or what might be most best to prioritize. So that will be completed in April. The first version will be completed in April, and then we'll have a final report likely in the summer that really does a full summary of everything that they heard. So that's sort of our first metric is like, did we complete that report? What did we learn as a result of it, and how can we report that out? And then we will look to the regional council to help us think through what kind of metrics they would like to use as points of success and strategy. That being said, I mean, certainly we are aiming to create recommendations at the very least on what programs would be most effective and what programs we'd like to see developed locally, and identify who would be the best to take leadership roles in implementing those programs. Some of that may include apprenticeship, for example. It may include micro-credentialing. It may include a nonprofit leading a micro-credentialing project with a community college. Part of the reason that we have so many great academic partners is their incredible expertise in how to actually do the program implementation side of things, and we'll definitely want their insight as we set targets and metrics.
Yeah, you know.
I find this quite interesting, especially the workforce development, because I'm on a board of a nonprofit. That's one of the things that we do, workforce development. And I find myself wondering if the clients that we have now and in the future would fit into that. So thanks for the information.
We certainly hope so.
Newell?
Well, this is great. It's a good update. And it is a little hard first time if you haven't heard it. But it's, it's crucial in our role of being a responsible agency. Not only do we build things, we program things. It's important that we make sure as we go forward, we are creating pathways that support the workforce, and we're not diminishing it, right? When you invented the first computer, we thought, oh my God, we're gonna lay off everybody. We don't need people. Well, that didn't happen. You know, and there's a wave of AI going out. Oh, we're gonna wipe out people. Yeah, there's gonna be more people on this side. There's shifts. So I think it's us as an agency, given our prominence and our role and our scale, actually, when you think that we've spent nearly, what, $6.5 billion, or will by the time we get to the end of this Measure J, that our impact on the county is significant. And on the workforce, it's significant. So I think it's an important role we're playing. The good news that I hear is, you know, Gomentum got a little slow start, but with this year's projection at nearly $1.5 million to $2 million of next year, right, of revenue, just portends what we saw when AAA had it. I mean, it shows the growth factor and where we're at. And they have been signing up new people. And it's 100%, this program's 100% funded out of that. So while we saw our initial loan to them be delayed, but we kind of anticipated that I think what this just finally demonstrates is that this is working. And I think with Brian's estimations and everything there, I think we're right on track. But it was worthy to be cautious about this because we wanted to make sure that this was not Measure J funds, that it came from other funds that we're doing. And, you know, in the future, you're probably going to see other opportunities the agency's going to do is we provide fee-for-services of helping agencies and stuff. There has to be a cost recovery and things for that as well. So thank you for the update.
Yeah, sure, Darlene.
It's sort of woven throughout. Lindy and I realize this is not appropriate at the federal administration level of today, but I am quite curious about the sort of inclusionary, and you did touch on a number of it in terms of, you know, women and, you know, other entities that, so I am kind of curious about whether the sort of gaps and needs or the go forward sort of measurement has some sort of inclusionary component, you know, for women, minorities, you know, expanding the workforce opportunities.
It's a very great question. We were very thoughtful as we thought about who would be important to interview during the gaps and needs assessment. And one of the things that came up was that we wanted to ensure we included frontline workers, wanted to include those who were currently in the workforce, and really hear from them about what they thought gaps, what gaps they thought existed, both from a very technical stance, right? Like, what skills are you not seeing in your fellow coworkers as they're coming online? But hopefully to also identify some of those sorts of gaps, right? Like, where is recruitment maybe not as strong as it could be? equity, or are we not creating the best access? So we're hoping that some of our frontline interviews will provide some of that insight. We're also going to be talking to disability rights organizations, right, folks who can kind of speak to that level of advocacy and who might be thoughtful about workforce development programs that are inclusive, particularly in that space, right, for those with disabilities or developmental delays or disabilities. So we are trying to consider some of that and certainly hope to address it, again, with our Regional Workforce Council to get their feedback and have their ownership of how we can continue to engage in that. But we're also very open to thoughts and recommendations. I want to say it's certainly a lens I think both, I as an individual and also our consultant have as we do this project, but more insight is always wanted and welcomed.
Anything else? Great. Thank you, Lindy.
Thank you so much.
Emily, do we receive any public comments written?
We do not have any public comments.
Okay. All right, next item is correspondence and communications. We have no correspondence in the packet. We're now moving to commissioner and staff comments. I don't have any comments myself. Any comments from commissioners? No? All right. Tim?
Just a couple. Excited to introduce you to our new Deputy Executive for Planning Programs and Policy. So Danielle Elkins is sitting in the front row here. She can say hi. We'll do a much more formal introduction at the full board meeting, but just want to introduce you and to her. And so she comes from, right now she works for herself as civic ideation. And so she has been doing that for a few years. And then she came from basically the city of Minneapolis, where she was really spearheading and leading a lot of rebuilding the mobility team for the city of Minneapolis, including a lot of the key programs. And if you know anything about Minneapolis, it's one of the more innovative cities in the nation, and relative to some of the programs she's done in terms of like micromobility, curbside management, data, as well as really kind of innovative policy and planning for the city. And then before that, she was in Atlanta, kind of managing Southeast. And so she's been doing some really great work there, working with a not-for-profit. And then also she worked for CH2M Hill as government affairs as well. So she's got a good mix of private and public experience across the board, as well as national experience. So excited to have her on the team and really leading our planning and program policy departments. So welcome, Danielle. Redefine Mobility Summit. So if you haven't seen your emails, but you should have gotten some holds and emails on that. If not, we'll make sure we get it to the top of your inbox. But it's Redefine Mobility Summit is shaping up. It's on April 22nd. And make sure you please hold your calendar. It's be a really, really great. We got 4 panels, one on innovative transit business models, another one on innovative in cities of the future, which is actually Danielle was actually spearheading and pulling that panel together. And then also we have workforce development. So as Lindy was mentioning, we're going to be launching a lot of this at the Redefine Mobility Summit. And then we have another panel on kind of advancements in ADAS, automated driving assist systems, and autonomous vehicle technology, particularly with the advent and integration with and advancement of AI. So it's going to be some great discussions. And then we also, because this is our 10-year anniversary, we are going big. We're having a welcome reception on Monday night for a lot of the people that are coming in. We do have confirmed delegations from Germany, Finland, and Japan coming in for the event. And then Wednesday, we're doing something new, taking advantage of basically all the Presto programs and projects. So we're going to be doing chartering a bus through the revenues of the summit. The summit supports itself. And so we're going to be chartering a bus, and we're going to be doing a large demo day on the day after, Wednesday, for all the VIPs, including board members. And we're going to be giving rides and tours at Bishop Ranch, Rossmore, Martinez, as well as take everyone out to the new facility in Richmond for Glideways, and then also take everyone to Gomentum Station. So we've got a lot of interest in the full demo day as well. And then on April 22nd, we'll also continue to have our demo zone with all of our partners. So it's going to be a great kind of 2.5 days of events and kind of showcasing of CCTA. So hopefully you all can be there.
You have a note coming.
Oh, another one. Where's Erica? Oh, Erica's here too. So I didn't see, she was like hiding behind the screens there. So And Erica is our new administrative assistant, so I apologize. She is sitting right behind. She was covered up by the computer screens there. So she actually comes from the city of Livermore. She was working in the mayor's office. She's got a lot of great experience working with the elected officials and really in the management of the city. Was really helping with a lot of the administrative efforts there, but also really interesting, given the fact that we're doing this county emergency-wide evacuation study. She also has some experience in developing training programs for some of those types of things, particularly for emergencies. And so she's coming in really bringing a lot of great years, over 30 years of administrative experience to CCTA. And so she's the new administrative assistant for the projects department. And so we're excited to have her join the team as well. And so we also been kind of geeking out. She's really into off-grid camping, so it's been really fun kind of sharing that with her. And so really excited to have Erica join the team as well. So welcome, Erica. So that's it.
That's it? Okay, all right. No other business. This meeting will adjourn at 9.